Namaste, welcome yogis. My name is Cassandra, and today I wanted to do a quick video to go over Warrior Two. I think Warrior Two is one of the poses that is the most misunderstood, and also the one where it's the easiest for students to not have proper alignment. And of course, you can have bad alignment in any kind of yoga pose, but it's really hard not to do Warrior Two. It's in almost any kind of class, and regardless of whether you're beginner, intermediate, or advanced, odds are when you practice yoga, you are doing Warrior Two. And because it's a beginner-friendly pose, we tend to think of it as an easy pose, but personally, I think it's a super hard pose. There is so much going on. So let me show you what I mean. Let's say we're doing Warrior Two, nice and simple. I'll do it with my left leg first. So left leg is forward, right leg is back. We start with our alignment with the feet, so I like to work from the foundation moving up. So left foot is pointing towards the center of my mat. My right foot, this is where there's a little bit of debate, and it'll be different depending on your pelvis and on your body. I like to have my back foot completely parallel to the back edge of my mat. That's what feels the best for my knee and for my hip. For some people, it'll feel like like a little twinge in the knee or a little twinge in the hip, and they like to bring their back toes in just a couple inches. So it's wider than a 45-degree angle. If it was 45-degree angle, it'd be more like a Warrior One, but they turn the toes in just a touch. So regardless of the one that you like, the alignment with their feet, the front or the back of my heel is aligned to the middle of my back arch. Once I have that with the legs nice and wide, I'm bending into my knee and opening up the arms. And sometimes I've had students ask how wide they should have their feet. Usually your feet end up kind of being underneath your palms. So if you were to open up your arms nice and wide, you would kind of want your feet to end up underneath the hands. So for most people, this is Warrior Two. All looks good, they move on with their day, move on with their practice. But there's actually so much more that should be going on in Warrior Two. So now that we have the feet and we have our alignment in the ankles, we need to move up. The next joint is the knees. And the knees is really where there's so much going on in this pose. So front knee, what you want to feel is the knee pressing open as if you were opening the knee towards the little toe. It's not actually going to go in line over that little toe. If you look down, you want your front knee to always be tracking over that second and third toe. Where we get in trouble with yoga, especially trouble with our knees, is when our hips and our ankles are doing one thing and our knee is doing a completely other thing. So I always like to have my knee tracking over the second and third toe, and you need to squeeze your glutes in order to pull it down. So what we don't want is this, and this often happens. The knee is buckling in, we're trying to push the hips out, trying to point the toes the other way, and it might feel okay for the first year of yoga, but afterwards it's really gonna wear on you. So front knee, squeezing and opening out, this back knee straight without hyperextending. So especially those of you who are really flexible, sometimes when you hyperextend, you kind of lock into the socket and you lock into the knee. Think instead of pulling up through your quads so that you're lifting up through the kneecap. And especially if you have knee injuries, this is what you want to keep in mind. So, okay, feet are perfectly aligned. Knees are feeling strong. I'm pressing it open. I'm lifting up through the quads. Next, we move up to the hips. And this is where I think there's the most misalignment and misunderstanding. Warrior Two has a tension of opposites. So look what happens if I'm really focusing on squeezing this knee out. The more I squeeze this knee out, the more this hip wants to pop forward. And what happens when this pops forward is, once again, my ankle, my knee, and my hip are not doing the same thing, and it's putting a ton of strain on my knee. So once we're at the hip joint, even though I'm squeezing this knee out, I'm pulling up through the quads, this hip is kind of pointing forward a little bit. It's out of rotation. So as much as I'm pushing this knee out, I'm also trying to press that hip back. And what happens is that the more we press this hip back, the more this knee wants to cave in towards the midline. Warrior Two is so hard. I mean, I'm gonna say it's one of my hardest poses because I have to all the time think about pushing this hip back while also pushing this knee open. And you need so much flexibility in your hips in order to do both of those things. So yes, it's a beginner-friendly pose. I'm just releasing because I've been squatting for a long time now. So yes, it's a beginner-friendly pose, and it's totally fine to teach this to beginners, but beginner does not mean easy. And I think this is where we get confused with our terminology in yoga. Beginner is not necessarily easy. Beginner classes and beginner poses can be so challenging. Just like some of the poses that we call a little bit more advanced can actually feel a little bit easy. So it doesn't mean the same thing. Beginner, easy, advanced, hard, it doesn't quite translate. So yes, this is a beginner pose. No, it is not easy. So let's say we have our feet correctly, ankles are correct. I'm engaging my knee by squeezing this out, by pushing this one back without locking, pulling up through the quads. And then I'm also working at pressing that hip back, tension of opposites, everything moving in opposite direction. Now is the chest. This is another area that sometimes doesn't work out quite well. You want to think of lengthening your spine and opening up your arms. And very often what happens here is people will lean forward. We're like strong in our warrior two, right? And often like teachers, I do this all the time too. I'll cue people to look over their middle finger as they gaze forward. And sometimes when that happens, people they're like, yeah, they're super strong in their warriors, and they lean into it. See if you can pull yourself back so that your shoulders stay directly over your hips. And just like your right hip was pressing back and your left knee was pressing out, you also want to feel your right shoulder press back. So this stays in line, left shoulder moves out, arms reach out. If you gaze forward, palms are parallel to the floor, and you're trying to bend that knee even more without losing the alignment in the pelvis, eventually trying to get your front thigh parallel to the mat. Whew. And let's release. So this is another thing about warrior two is like, if you think it's easy, try holding it for, a minute. Same thing on the other side. Right knee is pushing open. Left hip is pushing back without letting that knee buckle in. So tension of opposites. Open up through the arms, shoulders directly over the top of your hips, not forward, not back. Hands in line with your shoulders, not drooping down. Usually the back arm will droop a lot more than the front one. Super strong. This is a full body toning pose and also full body flexibility or hip flexibility a lot. And bringing it back in. All right, so I think this covers everything I wanted to mention for warrior two. Actually, one last thing about the feet. Often in balancing poses or standing poses, people tend to dig their toes into the mat, right? Like imagine you're in tree pose, your bottom toes sometimes grip the mat to help with balance, and sometimes that happens in our warrior two as well. The toes will contract. Instead, see if you can think of evenly distributing the weight through all four corners of both feet. So you're lifting up from the arches of the feet as opposed to contracting and curling the toes under. Curling the toes under doesn't actually make anything easier. In fact, it just makes it harder for you to find your balance and to properly utilize and engage the muscles in your feet. So next time you are in warrior two, I hope that you think about those points. If it helps, just always think of 3 points, the 3 joints. Start at the ankle, so think, what are my feet and ankles doing? Then move up to the knee joints. What are my knees doing? Are they staying in line over the ankles? Is there some kind of symmetry here? And then you can go up a little higher and take into account your hips. Are my hips doing sort of what my knees and my ankles are doing? What's the alignment of the pelvis? And then you can finally add on through the shoulders, through the arms, the neck, the head, and all that good stuff. I hope this was helpful for some of you. Please leave me a comment down below and let me know if you would like me to do other pose tutorials, breaking down the alignment and giving you some tips. And if you do, what poses would you like me to cover? I like to do educational content on my channel. I think that's really fun, and Warrior Two is one that I knew I had to address sooner rather than later. All right, that's enough for today. Thank you so much for watching. Please do subscribe to my channel. I put out new videos every single week, and I hope to practice again with you soon. Namaste.